What's up guys, I'm Sega Lord X, and in this episode we're going to be talking about the Sega Titan video game system. This was the arcade version of the Sega Saturn, and while most of its games were released in Asia, some did make their way west. We're going to take a look at the hardware, and we're going to take a look at the games that the Saturn would receive from it. Let's take a look. Alright, what we have here is a Sega Titan video game system, often called STV for short. I wanted to do a quick once-over of the board to show you how it looks and some important points. If you look here, it uses the same coin-style battery as the Sega Saturn, and it is also a standard JAMA compatible board, so it works with most superguns. While the layout of the board is quite different, it uses all the same general hardware as a Sega Saturn. Here is one of the Hitachi SH2 chips here. If you ever run into an STV board that isn't working properly, be sure to check that your electrolytic capacitors aren't leaking or bad. I have found that it tends to be an issue, especially around these areas here. Right here is the system BIOS, which is region specific, and there are games that will only play with those certain regions. I have a multi-BIOS installed that will automatically let me play any region's games. You can find them online for $15 or $20. When I first learned of the Titan arcade board and that it used cartridges, I was immediately curious as to whether these carts would work on a Sega Saturn. They both had cartridge ports after all. But as you can see here with this Saturn memory card, it's much smaller than the arcade board's port. And here is an actual Titan cartridge, which is much larger. These two carts are very different form factors and pinned out completely different. When buying Titan cartridges, you need to be especially careful of bootlegs, as this was rampant in most of Asia. Many of the more expensive cartridges are all fakes. You will always want to open and check the PCB in every Titan game. You'll need a security bit like the one that opens Genesis cartridges, and use care when separating the tabs at the top. Once inside, make sure that the chips clearly say Sega, as well as the front and back PCBs. Most fakes lack one or more of these details. When it comes to playing Titan games, it's never been easier than it is today. Low-cost superguns are readily available and fully featured. This one here uses Neo Geo controllers and uses RGB SCART. Simply pair the JAMA connectors together and you're ready to hook up your power and AV cables and play. Okay, now that we've looked at the hardware briefly, let's go ahead and take a look at the many games that the Saturn would receive from this board. It's more than you think, and some of the Saturn's best games actually originated here. Let's take a look at that.
No! Guy wins!
Fire it! Fire it! Fire it! Fire it!
搭載しているとはいえ、今回の機関が大きな賭けであることに違いはない。正面からの戦闘はできる限り避けねばならぬのだが。
Alright guys, just as a final note, I wanted to talk again about piracy for this thing. Piracy is rampant for it. In Asia, they pirated everything from the cheap stuff to the really expensive stuff. So you have to open up every single cartridge to make sure that it's legitimate. Believe it or not, I have seen even the most common game for the system, just multiple pirated copies of it. You got to double check. Another thing is that should you even bother with it? Now, something is inherently cool to me about owning Sega Saturn games in cartridge form. That alone made me interested in it. But it's also just the ease of use in general for arcade boards nowadays. Super guns have never been cheaper, and super guns have never been more readily available as they are today. You can go on eBay and get a halfway decent super gun for $60. So if you're interested in arcade hardware, if you're interested in the Sega Titan board here, I say give it a run. It's never been easier. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you next time.